So look, on NAB, as has been widely reported, they've announced a restructuring plan and they're also accelerating their investment spend. The idea is to digitalise more of the operations of the bank to cope with the new age that we're moving into in terms of fintech. So look, they've announced that they'll be taking a restructuring charge of between $500 million and $0.8 billion in first half 18. They'll also be accelerating their investment spend such that they incur an additional $1.5 billion of investment spend over FY18 and over FY18, 19 and 20, so over the next 3 years. Now, what that has meant to our numbers is that we've, because of the increased expense, and it will all be coming through cash earnings, we've downgraded our cash EPS forecast for FY18 by 12%. The change to, or the downgrade to FY19 is more modest at only 1%. The thing to remember here is this is a 3 to 5 year plan that NAB is embarking on, and our view on it is that there's little downside risk to this strategy. There can only be upside. So to put our view in a nutshell, that between $0.5 and $0.8 billion restructuring charge, the payback on that should be reasonably quick. They're looking to reduce their headcount by 12%, and the bulk of that restructuring charge is in the form of redundancies and project management costs. Now, on our numbers, we think they should be able to strip out $500 million out of their cost base as a result of the reduction in headcount. So that $500 million in cost saves gives the payback in time on the restructuring provision. But NAB is eyeing more cost saves beyond that $500 million that we're talking about. It looks like they're eyeing cost saves of over, or possibly close to $1 billion per annum. Now, it's hard to be confident about the other areas of cost savings, but we take comfort from the fact that NAB isn't, their expense growth won't be supernormal in order to achieve that. The other cost savings. So the other cost savings will come with expense growth, cumulative expense growth being a maximum of 8% over the next 3 years, according to the company's guidance. So let's call it 2.5% per annum expense growth for the next 3 years. And that's what they're using to target the other cost savings. So because they're not relying on supernormal expense growth, there can really only be upside out of their strategy, and we don't really see downside. So we remain comfortable with our ad recommendation. It's probably also important to note that the board expects to maintain the dividend in FY18 at the FY17 level. So they're still hoping to keep that full year dividend at $1.98, despite the higher expense charge that will come through next year. And then following it on to Clydesdale. So obviously you might recall that NAB provided a capped indemnity of £1.115 billion to Clydesdale at the time of the demerger. And so that's what NAB's on the hook for in terms of legacy conduct issues. That £1.115 billion had run down to about £500 million at 31 March. And what NAB said yesterday is that they've incurred an additional charge on that. So they've raised the provisions further. And that indemnity is now reduced down to £168 million. So that's all left out of the original £1.115 billion. Now, just to remind you of the arrangement here, whilst this indemnity is in force and is not exhausted, any additional conduct provisions are shared roughly 90%, 10% between NAB and Clydesdale. So NAB wears 90%, or more technically 90.3% of the cost, and Clydesdale wears 9.7% of the cost. And what Clydesdale has said in an announcement that they put out yesterday is that they've had to increase their conduct-related provisions by £403 million, and their share of that is £39 million. But to put all of this into context in terms of the CYB investment thesis, we maintain that the most exciting part of the CYB story is the potential for advanced accreditation that can release up to £1 billion of capital over the next 2 to 3 years. But we're cognizant of the risk that these legacy conduct issues can eat into that capital release. And CYB is now running a pretty fine line, because this capped indemnity is almost exhausted. Once it's exhausted, any additional legacy conduct costs would have to be borne purely by CYB, and it will all flow through their P&L. The other point to note with CYB, this is quite important, and I think this is not being paid enough attention to by the market. the bulk of their provisioning to date has related to payments protection insurance issues. And even yesterday's increase in provisioning related to PPI. Now, CYB is exposed to conduct-related issues on 3 other fronts. And there's one other front in particular that we're increasingly concerned by, and that's the mis-selling or the alleged mis-selling of fixed-rate tailored business loans to small business customers. Now, RGL Claims Management, which was a company that took group action against RBS for various reasons, has apparently secured £2 million of funding to launch group action against Clydesdale on the fixed-rate tailored business loans front. And according to media reports, they will be launching that group action by the end of this calendar year. Now, if that goes ahead, that has potential to result in material losses for Clydesdale. And it just means that the risk of the capped indemnity provided by NAB being exhausted is much higher now. And the legacy costs eating into potential capital release is also much higher at that risk.